Hey friend, welcome back to Lifestyle School. I am Hope, your coach and guide in all things metabolic health, lifestyle design, and building a body and life that you are really proud to live in. Today, we're going to have an honest conversation about something that gets tossed around a lot, but often I believe is misunderstood, and that's self-love. You've probably heard the phrase, or I should say phrases, just like love yourself, give yourself grace, do what feels good. And while there's nothing inherently wrong with those ideas, sometimes they're used as permission to avoid the very things that would help us grow. In this episode, I want to challenge the idea that self love means comfort because real self love, honestly, it often looks like doing the hard thing. It looks like sacrifice, it looks like discipline, setting boundaries, long term thinking. And if you're in a season of trying to change your health, your body, your habits, this is the kind of love you most need. Now, before we get into it, a quick disclaimer. I'm not a medical doctor. This podcast is for educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Always consult with your doctor before making any major health changes. So with that, guys, let's get into it. The first act of true self-love is this, and I think this is really important. And this is where it all, I think, starts on our health journey, and that is telling yourself the truth. Not sugarcoating it, not pretending, and not avoiding. And what this looks like oftentimes is asking hard questions. And, if you have worked with me in my coaching program, I think it's really important to ask yourself these hard questions. Things like, is this habit actually loving me back? Is it working for me? Is this food helping me heal, or is it keeping me stuck? Is this choice today moving me towards the person I want to be tomorrow? Or another way I like to put that one so today I'm recording this podcast is a Friday. Is Saturday Hope going to appreciate the choice that I made today, right? Because truly the choices we make today affect the next day, and so on. And, there are a lot of things we've been conditioned to think are loving in our society today. Like our society today is all about comfort. It's all about quick fixes. It's like, I like to call it the microwave society. It's our drive-through fast food society. Things like comfort foods, skipping workouts when we're tired, staying up late to watch that extra show because we've, quote, deserve it. But the reality is, if that food makes you feel bloated, anxious, inflamed, if it doesn't love you back, and you are cutting it out, that isn't punishing yourself. And I think sometimes people want to tell you like, oh, cutting out food is punishing yourself, or it's, what's the word? Not dysregulated eating, but, oh my gosh, you probably know the word I'm trying to say. It's not an eating disorder, but it's a wrong relationship with food. I can't think of the word, guys. This is Pregnancy Brain 101. And actually, if you didn't know this, this is the first time I'm recording a podcast where I don't feel like I'm about to vomit. So this is really exciting for me. But anyway, if I can't find the right words, guys, it's that pregnancy brain really hitting me. But if you're cutting out a food, it's really important to know, like, that isn't punishing yourself. It's protecting yourself, especially if that food isn't loving you back, right? I feel like that's common sense, but we've lost that in the dialogue around food and nutrition these days. And in lifestyle school, we talk about biofeedback as a love language. Essentially, right? We talk about getting off of autopilot, tuning into your body, and then listening to what your body's actually trying to tell you. Your body is always speaking to you. It's speaking to you through your skin, through your mood, your cravings, and your energy. And, it's not about being perfect with food. It's about being honest about what's working and what's not. And sometimes that's a really hard conversation to have with yourself. Honestly, I have been in the point where I'm like, this isn't working for me, but I really don't want to change. And so, if you're in a moment of being actually honest with yourself, and if you can say like, this isn't working, but I don't actually want to change at the moment, that's a good place to start because you're at least having that honest conversation of what you're doing isn't working. You're no longer lying to yourself because loving yourself means having the courage to look in the mirror and say, this version of me deserves more. And that starts with honesty. And I don't need to keep going through life, numb, tired, or inflamed. And so we have to start by being honest with ourselves and telling ourselves the truth and not beating around the bush. And I know that can be really hard at times because I think a lot of us were very hard on ourselves just at baseline. And I think there needs to be more monitoring of that internal mental conversation that's constantly going on in our head, where we talk kindly to ourselves, where we're encouraging to ourselves, like we talk to ourselves the way that we would talk to a friend, right? If you're saying things to yourself in your head that you would never say out loud to a friend, you really need to rethink that internal dialogue. But that is different than having these honest conversations with ourselves about where we're actually at and where we want to go and how our actions are reflecting that. So I want to encourage you this week, like look at your life and your lifestyle honestly and say, is what I'm doing right now putting me on the path to get where I want to be? Because honestly, I think a lot of us, there's probably things in our life that are not pointing us in that direction. Maybe we're overbooked, we're overscheduled, or we're just choosing foods that don't love us back, right? And so we have to be able to start by having that honest conversation with ourselves in a loving way, right? And I love to use that filter. If you wouldn't say that out loud to a loved one, you shouldn't be saying it to yourself in your head. Excuse me. Sorry. Next is real self-love means you're willing to choose short-term discomfort for long-term peace, health, and freedom. And I'm going to say that again because I think it's really important. Real self-love looks like you're willing to choose short-term discomfort for long-term peace, health, and freedom. Um, if you're willing to be uncomfortable today to create freedom tomorrow, that is going to change your life dramatically. And you know what this might look like is fasting when your cravings are like, I don't want to do this. Maybe it's the week before your period. You know that if you do these fasts, you're going to have a better menstrual cycle with, fewer issues, but your cravings are raging. And you know that your insulin is high, your blood sugar has been dysregulated. Fasting when your cravings say otherwise might be that short-term discomfort for that, lot more long-term health and freedom that you're looking for, right? It might look like strength training when it's the last thing you feel like doing. I can say there's so many workouts. Like I have been someone who's consistently been training for well over a decade at this point, and like there's never been a strength training session that I did when I didn't feel like it that I regretted doing. Usually at the end, I'm like, wow, that was so good. I feel so much better after doing this. But sometimes, we have to choose that short-term discomfort. And with this one, I always tell people, like, just get there and just commit to like starting doing 5 minutes, and you'll just be amazed by how much that momentum snowballs, right? But that is choosing discomfort because there's many, many, many workouts that I have not wanted to do, but I've done anyway. And then I was like, wow, I'm so thankful I did, right? Or another way that this may look is saying no to snacks or drinks or treats that it would be maybe yes, like easy to say yes to in the moment. Maybe you're at work and someone brings in donuts, or maybe, you're out with friends and everyone's getting an alcoholic beverage, but you have an empty stomach. And if you have that, it's going to spike your blood sugar. You're going to feel really tipsy and you're going to feel really unwell. And it's just not in line with your health goals. Maybe it looks like saying no to that, or waiting till after dinner to have something like that, or until you have food in your stomach, some protein, so choosing that discomfort can look a lot of different ways. And I think we need to stop looking at discomfort as something bad, but as something to embrace. Because discomfort is not the enemy. Discomfort is often the price for growth. And I want to say that again because I think this is good. And I think our society has gotten away from this, but discomfort is not the enemy. discomfort is often the price for growth. And I don't know about you, but I want to be someone who continually grows. And in fact, a huge part of becoming metabolically healthy is learning how to do hard things on purpose. We talk about this all the time in lifestyle school, but resilience doesn't come from ease, it comes from reps, right? Every time you do something hard with intention, you're building a deeper trust with yourself. You're telling yourself, I follow through, I do what's best for me, even when it's hard. Like you're telling yourself, I can do hard things, even when I don't feel like it. And that is what rewires our brain. And that's what changes our identity as, someone who prioritizes their health, as someone who values their health, someone who is healthy, right? And that at its core is real self love. Because let's be honest, we only have one body to live in. And if we don't take good care of this body, it's going to dramatically affect how we age and how we feel as we, grow older year after year. And another huge piece of self love that I think doesn't get enough airtime is saying no. And I want to be clear, this isn't just about food, but to really everything that drains you. I'm a mom of three kids. My oldest is almost 9. We're going to go into third grade this year. I have a lot of friends who have, two, three, 4 kids. And something that I see all the time is moms who are like running to and fro 24/7, can barely keep their head on straight because they're so overbooked with their kids' activities. No shade to kids' activities. Like I in high school played 3 sports. I loved it. It was great. But my mom definitely, to her credit, actually was not driving me to and fro all the way. I had to find my own way to a lot of these things until I got my driver's license. But if you want to be healthy, you have to get good at saying no because you can't add getting healthy on top of everything you're already doing. You have to create space for getting healthy. And that's going to look like cutting back on commitments, whether that's, kids sports, whether that's volunteering, whether that's hanging out with friends and socializing. It just has to happen, honestly. And, the different ways this can look like is overcommitting on your calendar. Like I just said, staying in relationships that undermine your progress. This is a really big one. I don't remember who said it, but someone famous once said, you're the average of like the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I think this is really true. I've been coaching clients for 10 years. And if you are spending the majority of your time with people who aren't on the same path as you, it's going to be so much harder to hit your goals because there's so much that plays into this. It's social, familial structures that have so many inputs into what we eat, how we think, our stress, how we think about ourselves. And so part of this self-love project might be pulling back from relationships that are undermining your progress. And that can be really hard. And I do think it's something that you should give a lot of forethought to, but it could look like starting with setting boundaries, right? Or another thing that kind of goes right along with it is constantly saying yes when your body is begging you for rest. And I think that is a big one. I think as a mom, for me, this one is really hard. If we need to rest, if you need to rest, you need to rest, right? And you can't continue to say yes to more and more commitments at the expense of that. You can't heal if you're always on edge. You can't fast well, you can't digest well, you can't sleep deeply if your nervous system is in a constant state of stress, and you can't become, the woman or man you want to be if your life is overloaded with obligations that don't align with your values. And so I think part of this, really clear in what I just said, is like you have to get really clear on what your values are. And maybe that's as an individual, or maybe that's as a family, or maybe that's like for a season, right? Like, what are our values in this season? And then make sure that everything else in your life is aligned with those. And if they're not, then you need to start, taking the paring knife to it and cutting things out. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to cancel something, to just say no. Sometimes that includes disappointing someone, which I personally really hate disappointing people. Also, a recovering people pleaser over here. Anyone else, raise your hand. Or, maybe this looks like just turning off your phone. Because here's a phrase that I use with my clients often, and it's not that you're failing your goals, you're just failing to protect the space required to reach them. And like I said earlier, it's you if you're starting on like a health journey, if you're trying to get healthy, if you're trying to change your lifestyle, you can't add that on top of your already full life. If you try to do that, it's just not going to happen because you only have so much bandwidth. You have to make space within your life to like allow it to happen, right? You have to carve out space for these new habits and routines that are in line with your health and weight goals. And I want you to really let that sink in because I think that is really important. Self-love looks like creating a life that supports your healing, not just surviving one more week in hopes of catching your breath. I've known many a person, as I've gone through mom life, where they're very busy and, the constant phrase is, oh, like as soon as we get done with X, I'll have more time and like I'll be able to catch my breath and we'll be able to hang out. And then it's like as soon as that's done, there's something else. And then it's the same phrase over and over again. And I love these women and I want the best for them. But what I have realized in my own life and in watching others, just from an observational standpoint, is that is like not the way to live if you want to be healthy and if you want to be thriving, because you can't constantly be treading water and expect to be hitting your health goals and exceeding and truly loving yourself in the way that needs to happen for you to be successful. So what does it look like in real life? What does loving yourself through your choices actually look like day to day? Here are some real life practical examples. And I mean, honestly, this hopefully sounds really simple, but in reality, it's harder than we think, right? Because we're so entrenched in our rhythms, our routines, our activities, and it can be really hard to make space. But something like just drinking a glass of water before having coffee in the morning, or getting outside first thing in the sunlight, getting that sunlight in your eyes so it can charge up your mitochondria, so it can, reset your circadian rhythm. That could be a really practical thing that for some of my clients has made all the difference. It could look like going to bed at 9 instead of scrolling social media, or even just making a commitment to yourself that you're not going to go on your phone in bed. That would be a huge. Or it could look like walking after meals instead of sitting on the couch. It could look like choosing protein first when you're eating. And it could just mean saying no thank you to food that hurts you, even when it's free or homemade. And I know for some people this is really hard, but it's a really good practice. Just learning to say no and to, get out of that people-pleasing mindset when it's not serving your health goals. These aren't huge things, but they are consistent things. And that's the whole point. In lifestyle school, we teach that consistency beats intensity 10 out of 10 days. Consistency beats intensity all the time. You don't need perfect days. You need a pattern of choosing yourself over and over and over again until it becomes second nature. I want to be clear. I think so a lot of times we think like we need a reset, like I need a new diet plan, I need a new goal. And it's the reality is we don't need a reset. We just need a new rhythm, like a new rhythm at which we live by. And that's in line with our values and in line with our goals. And I think, to start is again, it goes back to getting really clear on what our values are. And so I want to leave you with this. Self-love isn't a feeling. It is truly a practice, and it's not what you say, it's what you do. Okay. And it's not how nice your words are, it's how aligned your actions are with your values and your goals. Real self-love might mean making your meals instead of ordering out, might look like going for a walk when you're emotionally drained instead of scrolling social media. It might look like doing a fast when it's not convenient. It might look like letting go of things and people that no longer serve your healing. And, none of that is easy, truthfully, but all of that is a very loving thing that you can do for yourself. So I want to challenge you today to reflect. What's one area of your life where you've been calling comfort, quote, self-love, but it's actually keeping you stuck and apart from your health and weight goals? What would it look like to love yourself through discipline this week, through self-discipline? Maybe what's one boundary you need to set, whether it's with food, with your calendar, or with someone in your life? This journey is not about perfection. I want to be very clear about that, but it's about learning to show up with love for the version of you that you're becoming. And I want you to know, I truly believe you are worth the hard things. You are worth the effort. And I also want you to know, I am with you in it. I am on my own health journey. It's ever evolving, ever changing. And none of this is easy, but it's all totally worth it. So with that, guys, I'm going to leave you with this. I would love to hear any comments or questions you have in the comment section. As always, if you could subscribe to this channel, if you could leave me a 5-star review, leave a note. I absolutely love hearing from you guys on how this podcast is encouraging you. And, one of the best ways you could support and bless me and my work on this podcast is by sharing it with a friend. A lot of time and effort goes into the podcast, and you sharing it with someone is the best way for me to get the word out about what I'm doing here and all this work that I'm putting into this, trying to help you become the best version of yourself and help you reach your health and weight loss goals. So with that, guys, thank you so much for being here. I truly, truly value your time, and we'll see you next time on the Lifestyle School podcast.